Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Addie Hauschild-Willis. You've seen her, if you watched the Rob Browning episode, you would have seen Addie on there before, but I wanted to, we have a little announcement at the end here, and I wanted to talk with Addie individually and kind of get to know her a little bit. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Addie, go ahead and give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, I've played volleyball as an athlete for about 20 years or so. Since I was a freshman in high school, I picked it up kind of late. I played all 4 years in high school as a middle. I went to University of the Pacific, played for John Dunning, 4 years there, and Janie McHugh, the assistant coach at the time. From there, I went on a European tour where they put a bunch of All-Americans together. We all met in Europe and then got on a bus and toured around Europe with an agent company that tried to get us contracts overseas. And we would stop and play in these European gyms. And then some of us would get picked up or offered a contract, and then we'd all get on a bus and go to the next town. So I did that for a little bit. It probably took about a month or so. When I came home, I was not offered anything that I was particularly loving. So I decided to just go get a job with my degree, which was physical therapy. Worked in a physical therapy clinic for a bit, had a boyfriend at the time, and about halfway through my first year working in the real world, we got a call from a professional league that was starting, and they wanted people to come try out. It's called the US VL at the time. I think this was maybe 99 or so. I graduated college in 98. So I tried out for the USVL very unconventionally, and then got offered a position on that team. Played there for a couple years, turned into the USPV where they had a draft and 4 full professional teams. I was drafted to the Minnesota Chill, where I played a full season. My team there, coached by Kevin Hambley and Tore Alexanderson, we won the championship game with them. I was voted Libero of the Year. The first time I played pro in the USVL was when the Libero position was invented, and I had a broken ankle at the time, so they made me a Libero. I continued to play the following professional season as a middle because I was still feeling the urge to hit, and that was kind of what I had done for the longest period of my career. And ended up in a different position again for the Minnesota Chill. And then about 3/4 the way through that season, I was picked up for the US National Team. And I went on to the US National Team as a Libero.
And that position switch that we've talked about so much, so I'll just say this here. So Addie was the tallest Libero in the world.
At the
also
time.
switched from middle hitter
Correct.
to Libero.
Correct.
So can you explain kind of that? Is there, do we have, Rob had called this, he referred to it like a lineman maybe playing, switching and playing.
He used a great analogy.
Yeah, he had the lineman switching and playing receiver or something, but I feel like that is just, it's an incredible transition in sports.
Yeah, it's not common.
Yeah.
You don't see a whole lot of middles making that particular transition, even nowadays. You'll see a lot of outside hitters make that transition because they usually play 6 rotations. But for a middle in the 90s to transition to a position that wasn't even invented until 2000, that was pretty uncommon because Liberos or middles typically got subbed out of the front row.
Mm-hmm. But you were a 6 position middle, right?
John let me be a 6 rotation middle, so I passed all 3 rotations. Even in the front row, sometimes he would pull me back when I was in middle front, and I would back up and be part of the serve-receive line, and then pass and run slides and threes. So he was kind of the one that thought a little bit more outside the box, and went, this isn't really normal to have a front row middle in the passing lineup, but going to work, so let's do it. I loved it. It made a lot of sense for our team at the time. Allowed me to exploit and use all of my best skills. And back when I was in high school, Pam, my high school coach, she trained all of us to do all the skills. And because of the scoring system at the time, you kind of had to be a well-rounded player. So passing was something that I was already used to. So when it came time to make that transition, it was a pretty natural thing for me to do. And then once Ari Sellinger, who I left out of that fantastic list of coaches that I played for, he was like, well, let's put the Libero jersey on her because she can't jump right now for the tournament. So let's have her pass. And it stuck, and I absolutely loved it. It was a fantastic switch. But Rob, I remember him saying that he kind of related it to like a lineman playing a different position, and I kind of thought the same thing. So I connected with him on that. I know you're a football guy.
Yeah.
So it would essentially kind of be like, a Peyton Manning type of quarterback, and Peyton Manning 6'5", rocket arm, and he looks like a quarterback. He acts like a quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks out there. And then somebody coming to him and saying, you're in the Super Bowl now, and even though you're one of the best quarterbacks out there, we want you to receive the ball. We're not going to throw it now. Now we're going to catch it. And lo and behold, he's a better catcher. So that was me. I ended up being a higher level libero than I was a middle.
Okay.
So.
Wow, that is impressive. That is impressive. Okay, so you started off in the pro leagues, went to Team USA, and then from there, you're training now. So talk to us a little bit, though, about between there and the training.
Yeah, so I left the national team. I was cut before the 2004 Athens Olympics, and started, went back into physical therapy because that's all I knew. And I was still in Colorado Springs at the time. So I got a coaching position at one of the local high schools and started doing some lessons and took a team and started building the culture and using the USA stuff, and kind of fell in love with the results that the girls were getting and how excited they were to think that they were better than they started out being. And watching that little light bulb goes on, oh man, it's like a drug, trying to get them to understand what they're trying to do. So that kind of started my passion for coaching and teaching. I didn't know where it was going to go, and ended up, following an 18-year coaching career after my playing career, including, little bits at UC Davis. I spent 8 years at UC Davis. I coached high school for a bit, went to club, pretty competitive clubs, and just have been coaching ever since.
Now, out of all those, so from club all the way through college, what was the most challenging?
Most challenging coaching?
Yeah, coaching wise. I mean, is there an age that was the most challenging? Was it like because college is higher level? Was that more challenging? Talk to me about the challenges. What was the toughest part?
I think when I got to UC Davis, I was already looking forward to the age level that had its own challenges. Being at a university, it was my first college coaching job. I was an assistant coach there. Steve Walker brought me on, and they were going through a division switch. They were transitioning from D2 to D1, and the level and the age is something that I was used to. I like the high level. I like the game strategy, and I'm used to looking at myself in the rearview mirror and able to see the athletes that I'm coaching. So that made it pretty easy to coach that age level, or that age group. The level was, I think the transition from D2 to D1 mentality-wise for the girls in the program at the time, I think that was probably the most challenging. Gotcha. As a coach. Personally, I went through some huge personal challenges, trying to leave my athlete identity behind and really embrace being a coach. And it's very different. I ended up writing a book about it because it took a lot out of me personally. And I think that really sparked the idea to start getting all that stuff out of my head and be like, okay, this is something that I think I need to write about. So that personal challenge was pretty tough, but I got through it, and it was 100% worth it. And I can't not coach.
I gotcha. So the transition from athlete to coach was really the hardest thing for you. Yeah. Right? Giving up that athletic identity. Yeah. And I know you have a lot to say about that whole thing. You wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I did.
Right? So we'll get into that. But So D2 to D1. Talk to me about the speed of the game. Was that the big thing? Was it just more athletic, better? Were the girls getting beat really bad? What was the big challenges there?
Yeah, so they weren't getting beat really bad. I think that because we were playing a Division I schedule, but we weren't tournament eligible. So any result that we had during the season, we weren't eligible to play in the postseason anyway. So it was kind of like let's just kind of see what happens. But there is pressure to start taking these kids who were recruited as Division II athletes. So they're a little bit less ambitious. They're a different style of player. And turning them into, okay, now we're playing Long Beach State, we're playing Pacific, we're playing, the BYUs of the world. Like, it's time to turn it up. And we can, as coaches, we have confidence enough that we can build the skill, but can we get them through the mental hurdles of what do they do when they're behind or they're nervous or they're afraid, and they're looking at someone who's bigger and used to the Division I. Long Beach State has been Division I forever. So when, UC Davis is playing Long Beach State or Hawaii, it's like, well, how do we grit this one out? We don't really have the game strategy. We can put all the strategy we want together for them, but they have to learn how to execute it and then take the game into their own hands and learn by experience. So that eventually started to happen. But I think the doubt and the lack of confidence and having girls in my office crying and having to go through that was probably the most difficult and challenging part of coaching.
Okay. What was the best part of that? And then how did that, talk to me about the best part.
Oh, the best part.
Yeah.
The best part probably was seeing some of those kids at the end of their playing career go on and become club coaches or want to become, some of them, a few of them went in to coach at Portland State. Like, they went in and started coaching as a profession. And they have these really lofty, UC degrees, and they're super smart. But they chose they fell into coaching. And when they come back and they say, hey, this was really inspiring to me. My experience at UC Davis was impactful enough that I want to give back to other players what I got at some level. That makes everything all worth it, and that's probably my favorite part.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, so you're a trainer now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so talk to me about the difference between being a club coach and a trainer.
So to me, a club coach, I liked club coaching. I like that environment. I think it's necessary to help kids that are dreaming the college dreams, or even if they're not dreaming college dreams, to get them to the next level, because they're playing because they love to play. So I still love the team aspect of coaching, but I think being a club coach, you only get them for a few months out of the year, and then either you move on to the next age level or they move on to the next age level and leave you you change coaches quite frequently in club. So you don't really get to connect with them fully. Some of them will jump right in and give you a lot of themselves, and I can give myself to a lot of them. But because of the short period of time, I think that team coaching is difficult. Plus, you've got parents and you've got administrators and you've got all these other things that are kind of in the background that influence how you can coach them and what you should and could do with them. Whereas the training aspect of it, I think is where truly my passion is. I love to develop their skills. And I know a lot of coaches are great strategy coaches or great team coaches, and some are not very good technical coaches. And I love to take a kid who's either not very good yet or is already pretty good and just explain to her or him what they're trying to do so that they can get it. And once they get it, they can kind of teach themselves. But if they don't understand what they're trying to do, then they're not going to get the result they want anyway. So I tend to, as a trainer, to think of myself as their coach's assistant, where I'm helping make their player do what the coach is asking him to do, but maybe I say it a little bit differently. So I try really hard not to step on coach's toes and try to change. Like, I don't want the kid to be confused. My coach is telling me this, my trainer's telling me this. I think there's definitely some techniques that I would use myself that I tend to go towards, and I think are simpler. But I would never go against what a coach is saying. I'll try to, meet them in the middle and go, okay, this is what they want you to do. I'll explain how to do it. And a lot of times the club coaches, because of the nature of the season and because they have 12 kids, sometimes 14 or 15 kids on a team, they don't have the time to break that skill down completely to help that kid get better. They're just yelling them at the sideline, hit the line, hit the line, hit the line. And the kid's like, I don't know how to hit the line. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. Or I'm trying and I'm just not, it's not working. So then they come to me and I'm kind of like a doctor's office. Like, I just clean it up and fix it and explain it to them.
Yeah. You obviously know a lot about all of the positions. You coach my daughter in setting.
Yes.
And you're a favorite, of course, of of all time. But I actually, my daughter's been a setter. I'm shocked at the lack of setting expertise that they get, even in college. Not a ton of time spent with the setter, and I know that's because it's just like one part of the game. So how did you learn how to be a setting coach?
Oh gosh, well, I don't know if I would consider myself a setting coach. I can teach how I would set as a non-setter, because I can set a ball pretty cleanly, and I think if I had my career to do over again, I would go back and be a setter, knowing about the game what I know now.
What is that? What is it that you know now? What would make that decision for you?
Oh, the strategy, just messing with people. Now that I know what the tendencies are of middles, what the tendencies are of the outside, what the Libero's tendencies are. They want, to come in and protect one area of the court. Yep. I would start dumping and attacking and setting, opposite, and then look across the net and.
You're the quarterback.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. I would just mess with the other team, totally. But yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a setting coach because I wasn't in the setter position. But I can explain as best I can in simple words what it should look like, or as a hitter, what do I expect my setter to do? What am I looking for? And tell the setter that, whoever I'm training, this is probably what your hitter's looking for. So if you understand what she's looking for, you can help her out by doing this. And then, the angles and the speeds and the tempos and the sets and all that is kind of systematic.
My daughter's had a lot of setting coaches. I think you're way up there. I think you're underselling yourself a little bit. Footwork and everything, like you geek out on footwork, right? Like very, very, I shouldn't say geek out, but just like you're very, that's the one thing that I will say, just as being around a lot of different sports and a lot of different trainers and some really good ones. The one thing that all good trainers have in common to me is that they coach every rep usually, or have something to say usually about every rep. They may not say something every time, but they really do watch, and they watch very closely on every rep, and then they always focus on footwork, almost to a T. That's almost the very first thing that all these elite coaches focus on. Doesn't matter the sport, right? Football, basketball, volleyball, like you name it, you name the sport, and that's the very first thing, and that's one of the things that I really look for, and I appreciated about you was because you changed her footwork. Like that was one of the very early things that you worked on.
Well, she was a gymnast.
Yes.
To begin with.
Yeah.
So her balance and her body awareness was kind of already there. She had something. I think most great athletes start in something like when they're a toddler or when they're in primary school. They start with something like gymnastics or soccer or track or something else.
Yeah.
That kind of builds their body awareness and their balance. So she already had that going for her, and she's athletic, and I think that good trainers will focus on athleticism, and part of that athleticism is movement. And I think that there's a lot of kids, and there's no class for this. There's no class for movement. And actually, Kevin Hambley, the head coach at Stanford, when he was the assistant coach for the US National Team, we would talk quite a bit about movement. And when I became a coach, we would meet up in convention halls, and I'd say hi, and we'd start talking about movement and how important movement is. And I think that that's kind of where my foundation starts with training is, are you moving properly? Are you balanced? Are you loaded in the right spot? Because if you're loaded in the right spot, then you can be ready to get anything. And that's half a defense and half of your battle right there. So I love to try to teach kids to move better. They don't necessarily love it because they want to hit the ball and kick the ball and do all the result stuff. But I think if we can train a little bit of movement here and there when we can, I think it turns out better for them.
Yeah, one of the things I was amazed with watching you coach is with hitters as well, is your eye is very volleyball is a very fast, unpredictable sport a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But I notice when you're training, like you catch a lot of little nuance in the, not just maybe a step pattern, but was like how wide was the step, how short was the step, was it like the right rhythm, those sorts of things. And I'm just like, wow, okay, like this all is really good stuff.
Yeah, well, I think part of that came from the attention to detail came from having the experience of back surgery. When I was in college, my freshman year of college at Pacific, I had a ruptured disc. And when I had surgery for that, I had to relearn how to play the game. I remember John coming with me to my physical therapy sessions, and the physical therapist would say, okay, show us what you need to be able to do in your sport. And I would demonstrate passing. And they would say, ugh, okay, well, you can't do it like that anymore because you have this thing and we have to protect this thing. You have to build your core differently. So I had to start to learn to move differently. And same thing with hitting. They said, well, show me how you have to hit. And I took a spike approach as natural as I could. And they went, nope, you can't do it like that anymore either. I was like, well, how am I supposed to do this? then? Yeah. And they took me right through it. And John watched, and he was part of the whole process. And we went to all those physical therapy sessions and learned how to be in neutral spine and be stronger in my core. And actually, I think that back surgery was probably the second biggest blessing in disguise, because I had to relearn where my balance was and where my core was, where my strength was, and that provided a lot more movement training. And that attention to detail, just being able to be in a neutral spine and activate your abs when you're still talking, like I'm doing it right now. It takes practice.
Yeah. And there's a lot of abs when you hit, right?
Yes.
Which I didn't know.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I played some volleyball and I didn't know that. So
yeah. So most coaches will tell you, your power comes from your core. And that's true. Your power does come from your core. Most kids don't know what that means. They don't know what that feels like. So my favorite thing to do is explain to them what that looks like and what that feels like so that they know, oh, those aren't just words. Power comes from your core, duh. Yeah. But how do you activate that? What does it look like and feel like? So that's the part of training that I like to do. So like you were saying, like I find the littlest things, like how their shoulder is rotating or how their elbow is going through the window, how their wrist is snapping. Stuff like that is what I really like to pinpoint. Okay.
If I had to say one thing that you are really, really like focused on as a trainer, what would that be?
Oh,
tough question,
one thing skill-wise?
Skill-wise, yeah. Like what is your, like expertise-wise, what would you say, like you 100% like you can fix whatever kid in the entire world with this thing? Like what would be or maybe there's 3 things, that you feel really comfortable with.
Oh gosh.
What would those be?
I would say getting into a good relationship with the ball when you're passing. I love to teach passing.
Okay.
And I think that there's a million ways that different coaches teach, different ways to pass, and there's lots of schools of thought on what you should be doing. And I like to try to explain that, angles are great and your platform is great also. But if you don't have a good relationship with the ball and if you're not tracking it on time, if you're not tracking it early and starting that movement ahead of time and letting your body do what it naturally wants to do, I think you're not as accurate or consistent as you could be. Okay. So I love the relationship with the ball, and that's what I teach Liberos for reading too. Like reading is kind of a myth. It's a word that coaches have used for years and years. Like read the hitter's hand, read the hitter's elbow, read her shoulder. And personally, from being a libero, especially at the Olympic level, I can't see the hitter's hand behind the ball. It happens too fast. They are too good and too big for me to see their shoulder. And sometimes they turn it so quick, like you can't even see it coming. So I read their body language, and I read their position with the ball and what it looks like they might do, and then use the experience of what I have done as a hitter in the past. I know that the middle's tendency when they're leaning this way is to cut it this direction, or if they're leaning this way, they're angling to hit another direction. So you can start to pick up those things, and those are experience. Those are game IQ things like what Rob was talking about in that first podcast. Yep. But I think getting rid or clarifying, not getting rid of it, but maybe clarifying some of the coaching myths or taglines or these keywords that we've used for years and years, and help kids understand what that actually is.
Right. Okay, so if I was to verbalize what you just said as far as the leaning this way or that way, for if somebody's just listening and can't see, you're kind of saying if a hitter's leaning to the right, they're going to hit the ball left?
Yeah, if they're leaning away from the ball.
Away from the ball,
they're trying to probably angle it the opposite direction.
The opposite direction, gotcha. So if they were leaning to their left, they'd be hitting it.
Yeah, and if the ball is too close to them, if it's like if they're right underneath the ball, if they're looking up at the ball or their chest is up and they're really close to the ball, they're probably not going to hit it terribly hard. They could hit it really deep, or they might take a roll shot, but only if they're within a certain space with the ball. If the ball's a foot or two in front of them and they're leaning forward for the ball, then you're probably going to want to get your hands out pretty quick because they're going to kill it.
I gotcha.
So.
All right, awesome. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and let everybody know. Addie is going to host her own podcast here for us, and so the first episode she'll have with a national recruit, and she's going to have a lot more people. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the way that you see the podcast going for you?
My vision for the podcast called Digging Deep, because I was a libero, and I love talking volleyball all the time. It used to take me hours to get through a gym when I would walk in for a club tournament because of all the people that I would recognize in the gym and want to talk to, and we would just get to talking, and I could talk volleyball all day long. But I also love to get underneath the surface and find out like the whys and the how people do this and what's more about them that can be helpful to kids coming through the system now that are looking to achieve what we've already achieved, or get into the coach's head, or all the mind stuff, all the deeper things than just I made this team, I played for this coach, I won this championship. All those accolades are fantastic, but how did you do it? Like, how did you get through the hard stuff? So I want to dig a little bit further into
like, how was the recruiting process?
How was the recruiting process?
What are the things that maybe people that are going to go through those?
Yeah, and things that, like with Abby, we'll talk about, what happened that she didn't expect to happen. Like those little surprises that come up, that kids who are going through the recruiting process may not know about the recruiting process. And lots of families out there have never been through it, so they're kind of, shooting in the dark. They don't know what to expect or even where to start or how to get there. And there's no one perfect way to do it. So if I can pull some people who have gone through it, even recently or not recently, and give them their, story of their journey, then I think it'll shed light on how other people can do it.
Awesome.
So.
Well, I am excited. I'm excited for this venture for you.
Me too.
So Addie will be your host of Digging Deep right here on the Sports Idol Nation channel. It'll be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It'll be all over the place. So, awesome. Addie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to working with you.
I'm very excited. Thanks.